Pleased to meet you.
Hi.
Thank you to welcome me in Environnement here at the European Commission. First of all, from your perspective, why is it now time to make a choice?
Yeah, first, I think because it's becoming more and more obvious that us humans with our activity are causing unbalancing the planet. And I think that it's becoming obvious, and there are reasons which you can arguments which you can develop from the environmental side, but there are also pretty much clear economic arguments through which you would come to the same conclusion that we have to change. If I start with environmental reasons, you have probably heard that we will be 9 billion between the mid of the century. Currently we are 7 billion. Which means that in just one generation on the planet it will be additionally more people, 2 billion, than it was the total amount of population at the beginning of the 20th century, when it was 1.5 billion.
That's it.
It means more than 200,000 per day, which is in less than 1 year Germany, the biggest European country, or if you want my country, which is not among the biggest, in 9 days and 6 hours. So that's how fast it's going. We are also assuming that we will have 3 additional billion people who are today living in poverty moving to the middle class consumption till 2030, which is around the corner. Yet already today many of the resources are used in a way which is unsustainable. So if we will continue business as usual, we would need approximately 3 times more resources till 2050 than we are using today. We would need approximately 70% more of food, feed and fiber than we are using today. And till 2030 we would be approximately 40% short of drinking water. That's the situation. Yeah. Yet already today 60% of our ecosystems which are underpinning those resources are basically used in unsustainable way, degraded. And that's why coming to the conclusion that we have to change the way we produce, the way we consume, the way we actually live. It's an easy conclusion. That was recognized also in Rio de Janeiro 2 years ago when we met again on this Earth conference. But if you want additional arguments from the economic side, because these arguments should be also good enough for economic reasoning, but if you want additional arguments from the European point of view, in particular, why it's important to change the way we produce and consume, there are basically 4 which are for me the most important. The first is that we are locked into intensive use of production. So industrial revolution started in Europe, and we consume yearly 15 tons of various resources per capita. 5 tons of that it's basically waste, and half of that it's landfilled and means lost forever. The second reason is that the resource prices after the whole century of decline started to grow. We call it a hockey stick, 300% from 1999 to 2011. 85% of European companies are expecting that the prices of resources will be increasing in the next 5 years. The third argument is that already today, in the biggest European economy, which is not the cheapest, German economy, you can find out that you can connect 43% of the cost to the use of resources, only 18% to the labor cost. And yet we only talk about labor cost, and we don't talk about total factor productivity cost or resource productivity cost. And finally, Europe is extremely import dependent on the many of the resources. We import more than 60% of the energy. If you took the periodic system, half of the elements which we are building in our technologically advanced products are imported. And the conclusion that we should produce the same products by using less energy, less water, less raw materials, produce the products which could be reused, recycled, makes economic sense. And that's why also you could come to the same conclusion that that we have to change. We have no alternative to that.
We need to change.
Yeah.
So how do we go from choices to actions?
Yeah, that's of course the most important question. I think it is important to recognize that, of course, market, which is a distribution mechanism which we know and for which we currently have no real alternative, will stay with us, will be an important factor. That's why we need to absolutely focus on how we would change some of the market failures which are currently existing. For example, the prices on the market are not really showing the real scarcity of the resources. Or, for example, rewards which are given to one of productive factors, to the capital, are higher than to the other production factors. Or our CEOs in various factories are rewarded basically very much on the basis of short-term results, not on the basis of long-term results. All those things which are influencing on our decision-making are actually leading us into the wrong direction. That's why incentives like prices, taxes, subsidies, and so on would need to be changed. And these are the things on which we have to actively work. So it is market incentives, market mechanisms. I am a believer into innovation because human mind is without limits. But if you want the proper innovation, you need proper regulation which sends the innovation potential into the right direction. Companies need predictability. They need to know where is the area where we would like to go. And this predictability for them, it's necessary if they want to invest into the future which we would like to develop. Then a lot depends from the very moment how you design the product. Because if you design the product that you cannot reuse it, recycle it, then of course at the end of the day you will not reuse it and recycle it. And with the whole design of the product, you already decide on the destiny of where the product will end up when it will finish its use. Then a lot can be done also by informing the people. We are consumers, we are enormous power if we have possibility to choose. But the fact is that today approximately half of our citizens are saying that they do not trust anymore the eco-labels because we have around 400 eco-labels currently globally. And of course, if you don't have any information on the basis you can choose, it's difficult for you to choose. So information, informing, education, all those things which are connected to the consumers are important. And finally, there are also important things which are connected to the business models. So it's not important for us that we owe the things if we use them. So we can lease them, we can share them, and although all those types of new models will actually also have to be more present than currently. So integration of concerns which I mentioned from the environmental point of view into other policies are of fundamental importance. So if you do that, then you basically have done really a lot for policy making, but it's a complex story. You need to have a holistic approach and nothing like taking all and every decision which is leading us in this direction with those things in mind will simply not bring us there.
But for you, is it still possible to make actions now?
Of course it's still possible. Not it's still possible, it's necessary. You know, there is a saying which goes like that, the best time to plant a tree, it's 20 years ago, of course, but if you miss that moment, the second best time it's now. So I think awareness of that, what we are discussing, is getting more and more obvious, not only among us common citizens, policymakers, also in the business sector. Many of them are seeing all those things developing, and many do know that future development, economic opportunities actually lie in understanding those limits I'm talking about. That in the future, in reality, if we are sincere that we want to keep, for example, industry in Europe, those things can't be ignored. And that if we want to have growth and economic development in the future, if we want to create new jobs, there will be green growth, or because no other growth will be existing. So I'm absolutely convinced that these are the things which you have to take into account, and you should not look to them as the limits of your creativity, as the limits of our economic development and human development as such, but we have to understand that we are part of that nature, that we are part of global society which is more and more interconnected, more and more interdependent than in the past, and that we simply have to behave like that.
So, Mr. Potočnik, how do you imagine the future?
Yeah.
For conclusion.
We live in the 21st century. I would call it that a century of fragility. Why? Because, as I mentioned, we are more interconnected, more interdependent than ever. Also, a responsibility which we are carrying as individuals and also collectively is much, much higher than it was the responsibility of somebody who was living 100 years ago. So those global challenges which we are facing, from climate change to disappearing biodiversity, poverty, many others you can mention, many which are connected to use of natural resources, are simply so important that we have to act together. So I do imagine the future first in which we will understand that economy and environment are two sides of the same coin. You cannot protect environment, our health, without in essence addressing the issues which go to the core of our economic development. And you cannot basically talk about the future economic development and the future growth and jobs if you do not take into account the very serious issues which are connected with the fact that we are, by our activity, putting our planet out of balance. So this is connected. And this coin, which I mentioned, we should stop flipping it. I think it's utmost important that we understand that that's the reality in which we live. Because all of us living in business sector or taking care for environment, all of us should understand that me taking care for environment, I need a job. But on the other hand, the gentleman who is busy in production, who is struggling to be on the market, also that gentleman comes in the evening at home, puts the jacket off and wants to drink clear water, wants to breathe an air which is not polluted. So we are the same persons. We have the same public interest which we have to protect. That's the future to which I believe.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks.